Moss Eisley Spaceport, you will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado.
And I am Dan Simon, broadcasting from the Studio Simon headquarters at historic Bowman Field in Louisville, Kentucky.
Dan, we are recording this segment on a Friday, and we're talking about dive bars. And so I think that is thematically appropriate. However, it's not Friday evening yet. It's Friday morning, which of course prompts the question, good morning, hello, how are you?
Good morning to you, Paul. I am fantastic. How are you?
I am doing very well. Looking forward to the weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend. This is the Lake Country DockHounds. It must drive them crazy. They must get called the Lake County DockHounds all the time. They are the Lake Country DockHounds, unaffiliated team in the American Association of Professional Baseball, notably a team that plays in Wisconsin. And that fact is important because they have an alternate identity, the Wisconsin Dive Bars. Obviously, this is a fun thing. It's intentionally fun because it has been alternate identity season the last couple of months. I was writing an article a day basically in February and March for sportslogos.net because there were so many alternate identities. There are a lot of alternate identities out there, and a select few sort of shine through where I'm like, you know what, that's a fun one. Let's talk about it. It's a little bit different. I felt like this one was a little bit different just because of the subject matter. Like they're focusing on dive bars. It's not like Wisconsin's the only place in the world that has dive bars.
Not only is it not the only place in the world that has dive bars, there is a dive bar right across the street from my office. It's called the Air Devils Inn. It's a kind of like a Louisville institution.
What's your definition of a dive bar?
I was actually thinking about that. And
Yeah.
the reason I was thinking about, prior to you asking me, the reason I was thinking about that is because I saw a video, or I saw screenshots of a video from the DockHounds unveiling of this alternate identity. And I believe there were a couple of individuals from the team in a bar. And it was, to me, decidedly not a dive bar. It looked like a nice bar. So I guess I don't know if I have an actual definition, but it's certainly not fancy. I picture them as being kind of dark, probably things like stickers on the walls or on pillars in there, and maybe a layer of dust on things that have been on display there for a long time, that type of thing. Very, very a neighborhoody kind of place. How about you? What say you with regard to how you define them, or what defines a dive bar?
I think low ceilings are a defining feature, and I think games. I think you can't have a dive bar without games. We very famously, in our baseball palooza, and we were in Grand Rapids, we always go looking for a dive bar where we can, play games. We will play like shuffleboard, or we'll play darts, or we'll play, pool is sort of the standard. And we looked up, we looked for a dive bar, and we found one, and we went to it, and it was immediately adjacent to another bar, and we didn't realize it, and we just went walking in, and before we knew it, we were in like the college underage drinking. Like, we were older than everyone there by 30 years, and not all of us are 50 yet. So that gives you an idea of how old everyone in that bar was. And it was very funny. We felt super out of place. We got a pitcher of beer. We tried to hang in there. And then one of our gang went over to the pool table and asked, two young women who were playing pool, like, hey, do you mind if we use the pool table when you're done? Could you just let us know when you're done? And they were like, yeah, but there's a lot of pool tables next door. And we said, well, like, what's next door? And they were like, oh, it's this bar called Mulligan's. And we're like, Mulligan's is what we were looking for. It turned out we were in the wrong bar, super out of place. Went next door, got pictures of, PBR or, whatever the local version of Yingling is, played pool, played shuffleboard. We're very comfortable the rest of the night with people our own age and music that we recognized. So to me, that experience really highlights what a dive bar actually is it's, young people dancing to loud music is not a dive bar. Old people playing shuffleboard and pool, drinking bad beer, that is a dive bar.
Okay, well, you have more experience with dive bars than I do. Um,
I go
by
to
the way,
one dive bar a year with the Baseball Palooza guys. So anyway, Dan, we have on this episode Brian Giese, who is the director of marketing and communications with the DockHounds, and then Gregory Skook, who is the designer who created this brand. And so they're on together. So the three of us have that chat, and then you'll be back with a Studio Simon Stumper. But before that, Dan, I want to say as always, but not as always because we don't always have a letter. But we do have a letter from Gerald Carpenter, who has a thought-provoking question for folks who work in minor league baseball branding. Gerald says, "Hello, Paul and Dan. Due to your interest in baseball logos, statistics, spreadsheets, odd facts, and generally everything that nobody else cares about, thank you, Gerald, I thought you would be the people to ask. When should a franchise celebrate a milestone anniversary? During the anniversary season or the next season after its completion? The reason I ask is because 4 MLB teams have uniform patches in 2026 commemorating a milestone anniversary: the Mariners, Blue Jays, Athletics, and Cubs. The Mariners and Blue Jays are celebrating 50 seasons, 1977 to 2026, with 2026 being that 50th season. The Athletics, 1901, and the Cubs, 1876, are celebrating 125 and 150 seasons, respectively. If my math is correct, these milestones were reached last year, and 2026 is their 126th and 151st season. So which way is right? Do you have an opinion? Why isn't it the same across MLB? Thanks for a great podcast." The first letter segment author, Gerald Carpenter, he did, by the way, submit the first ever letter to this segment. Dan, I think this might be just a simple question of vocabulary here. I'm going to let you field this question first, but I think the number of seasons versus the anniversary is really what we're talking about here.
Well, I have done numerous commemorative logos in my career, and I have not done a spreadsheet on them, but it seems like I've done maybe as many seasons logos as I've done anniversary logos. So there's really not a right or wrong, like which way they should do it. If it were up to me, I would always do anniversary. And here's one of the reasons why, maybe the only reason. I don't know if I have multiple reasons for this, but when one is married, you do not celebrate seasons or years. Wait, here's a little aside. I saw a one-paneled cartoon once that I really loved. It was an older man and an older woman sitting in their living room or parlor, and the husband says I think the husband's like wearing a baseball cap or something like that. There's something in the cartoon that baseball is important to this guy, and he says, "I can't believe we've been together now for 30 seasons." So anyway, but that's why it made for a funny single panel cartoon, because you don't celebrate how many years you've been married. You celebrate the anniversary of your marriage. Yeah. So to me, that's how teams commemorating seasons or anniversaries should do it. But it's okay that they do it the other way. Matter of fact, the very first commemorative logo I ever did was for the Dodgers. Before I worked for the Dodgers, I did it as a freelance project, and it was 35 seasons of the Dodgers in Los Angeles. And so the logo says 35 seasons. Interestingly, I've done other ones that say seasons, and in minor league baseball, one in particular, I remember when I was working on it, it was for the Billings Mustangs,
Ah,
and it was 60 seasons. And when I did the logo, the first draft of the logo had a big 60 in it, and then I had kind of a banner worked in somewhere in the logo that said seasons. And the general manager of the team asked me to remove the part that said seasons, and it just said 60.
oh,
And it said Billings Mustangs as well. But they I kind of remember like when the NFL was celebrating their 75th, I think. And it just said 75. It
hmm
didn't say seasons or 75th anniversary. So sometimes they'll do it like that as well. And then the public is sometimes left to guess, well, which one is it? Is it seasons or anniversaries? So that's what I have to say about that.
I do have an opinion on this. I prefer the anniversary over the number of seasons. I think the Mariners and the Blue Jays are jumping the gun this season. The Mariners are celebrating their 50th season. They were founded in 1977. 2026 is their 50th season. Everyone gets the math. You don't have to explain why that's the case. I think the anniversary is the more important date. I think being able to say this team played its first game 50 years ago is more important than this is our 50th season. What I wonder about that is, will the Mariners, after they do a whole 50 seasons thing in 2026, will they do a 50th anniversary in 2027? Are they going to get to celebrate 50 twice?
No,
So,
I don't know if you mean that as a joke, because my answer to that is no. At least in my experience, anytime I've done one that said done a logo that said anniversary or season, they didn't then do the other one.
Gerald, thank you for a thought provoking question. And as always, if you want to send us a letter, it's my email, pauljcaputo@gmail.com, or find Baseball by Design on the socials, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky primarily. That's where I am. Dan, we're going to get to the conversations. We're going to get to the episode, and then you'll be back with a Studio Simon Stumper.
I will indeed. See you in a bit.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Brian Kesey, who is the Director of Marketing and Communications with the Lake Country DockHounds, and Gregory Shook, for the first time on the podcast, the graphic designer with the Lake Country DockHounds. Gentlemen, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Well, it's great to talk to you both. Obviously, we have featured the Lake Country DockHounds on Baseball by Design previously, but you all have made something of a splash with a new alternate identity. And Brian, obviously, your role with the team. I wanted to talk about some of the inspiration for that brand and what it all means. Gregory is responsible for creating the actual artwork for the brand, and so I want to get into that with Gregory a little bit here. So, Brian, I'm going to start with you. The DockHounds, who are an independent professional team, are celebrating local watering holes, basically, with this dive bars alternate identity. Not something you would normally think to celebrate with a minor league baseball identity. Where was the inspiration to adopt this alternate brand, the dive bars?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. It started out we did our first alternate identity almost 3 seasons ago now with the Flying Monkeys alternate name. And that was a tie-in to the city of Oconomowoc, having shown The Wizard of Oz. They premiered The Wizard of Oz initially before it was even shown in Hollywood. And so we had some really good success with that. And we thought, okay, as alternative team names go, how can we expand this beyond just an Oconomowoc Lake Country reach? And myself and our entertainment director, Andy Burscala, sat down and we kind of went through and he said, what about the greatest thing in Wisconsin? And that's the corner bar. He said it from a reach standpoint. I said, I love it. I said, absolutely. I said, and we kind of started kicking around some names and everything else. And I said, well, I said, what if we just kept it simple and we were, just become dive bars, for a spell. And there's a social media influencer, the Wisconsin Dive Bar guy. And so we reached out to him in probably June or July last year, invited him to a game out to Lake Country, kind of said, hey, this is our inspiration. This is kind of what we're looking to do. And how can, are you okay with us, kind of jumping on board and taking the name a little bit and running with it? And he said, absolutely. He said, whatever we can do to promote, dive bars throughout the state of Wisconsin. It's such a cornerstone of culture in the state and everything else. And we thought, to be able to take our brand and expand it out to everybody and anybody in the community. And then, once we launched it, then all of a sudden we're like, geez, we've sold merch in 48 out of 50 states so far, in less than a month.
What are the holdouts? What are the last two we need to get?
Hawaii and Alaska.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, the name is fantastic, and you can see why it caught folks' eyes. Because it's a crowded landscape out there, right? Like, I mean, you referenced the Flying Monkeys. There's another Flying Monkeys now, right? Like, I'm sure you guys saw that, and a collegiate summer league team now called the Flying Monkeys as well. So it's a crowded landscape out there. You've got to do something to get noticed. One of the things I enjoyed, and Gregory, this will be a question for you here, is that the visual representation of the brand encapsulates some things that are not included in the name, right? Like Dive Bar. In your press release, the team did a really good job describing the kinds of places with low ceilings, well-worn bar stools, friendly bartenders who know your order, and a fridge stocked with Wisconsin favorites like Pabst Blue Ribbon and Schlitz, right? Like that evokes dive bars for sure. But the brand itself, the identity itself, there are some things incorporated into that are not just, it's not just dive bar, but specific to like Wisconsin dive bars. So I'll let you take it from here. What were some of the things that you incorporated into that logo, and what were you hoping to accomplish, sort of with the visual representation of this brand?
Yeah, so with the mascot, we looked back into, the 1920s, 1930s style of animation, and we've got some inspiration through that with, the hands, the eyes, just the general stature of character boat tabs. And, from the mascot standpoint, we wanted to stand out. We wanted to create something that, you don't see everywhere. You see all of these crazy style imagery of usual suspects for alt identities, but we wanted to hone in on that Wisconsin aspect. Dive bar cups are a huge part, and playing the dice games is something that you go to any Wisconsin dive bar and you'll get some crazy deal on a pull or a tab. So we wanted to go and hone in on that. And with that, we have a dice cup mascot. And there's some fun little Easter eggs throughout that. Like the dice showed the U-22, which was our first year as the DockHounds. And we wanted to incorporate the history of the team, seeing as this is also our fifth year, into this massive character. On top of that, we draw from the PBO logo with a word mark. So you'll see some hints of the usual beers that you'll find at these bars in a design over the course of just the actual mascot to the word mark.
So I pride myself on trying to catch as many of the Easter eggs as I can when I write about these brands for sportslogos.net. The dice on top of the dice cup showing 22 to reference the first year of the DockHounds. I missed that one in the Sports Logos article. So that I appreciate you pointing that one out to me. This was one, Brian, I'll come back to you here. This was one where the dice cup itself, I'm not familiar with Wisconsin dive bars, not because I don't like dive bars, but because I just haven't spent that much time in Wisconsin. So, I'm sure I would be. The fact of the dice cup, and Gregory referenced the pull tabs, the cherry theme that's on the uniform from those pull tab games. These were all things I was not familiar with. So you mentioned, sales have gone to 48 states. are these things that I should have known about? Like, should I have known that, like, in Wisconsin dive bars, they're playing dice cup games? Like, that was new information to me.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's I feel like that's kind of a Wisconsin dive bar staple. Shake of the day or, different ship captain crew, different kind of shake games, sitting at the bar having a drink, putting a little money on the line, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Pull tabs have become a huge thing within the bars within the state of Wisconsin as well. Pull tab machines. I know, my daughter's basketball club had their year-end basketball banquet at a bar restaurant in the area here by us, and they have a pull tab machine. And one of her teammates' younger brothers was literally just going up with cash, putting it into the pull tab machine, getting pull tabs out, and just, ripping pull tabs, during this banquet. I thought it was hilarious. I thought, our brand, I showed it to her basketball coach, and our brand, she was like, this is my son's spirit animal right here. So I think it's just we tried to bring the culture of just dive bars into all those little things. And it was a great kind of maturing process that we went through with the brand as a whole. Because there's so many things about dive bars that we could include, right? There's dart leagues and dart boards and pool tables and all of those kinds of things. And so we tried to subtly kind of bring in those things. So some of our merchandise are, green t-shirts, not a traditional color that we use at all for DockHound stuff. Something that, we could bring into the brand itself and say, hey, here's a shirt that, that somewhat matches the pool table felt that you regular and frequent and that kind of thing. So really just trying to, kind of encapsulate everything and anything that we possibly could without just kind of cramming it down people's throats. So we went, as we were going through the process, right? And Gregory can attest to this too, that we started out with the idea of the pool table felt being our jerseys. And, or actually even before that, we started with wood paneling. We're like, what's the number one thing in a dive bar? And we're like, wood panels. So the original jersey kind of had that idea behind it. And then we all kind of thought, can we wear brown jerseys? And then what does a hat look like? And,
Yeah.
so that whole maturing process that we went through really kind of landed us, to where we are, where it's, our stadium is built on the original Pabst farms, where so that's where Pabst Blue Ribbon got its start from. Our stadium is on Blue Ribbon Circle. And so we really kind of said, all right, let's pay homage to that too. And that's where the jersey design comes in with that really bold red, white, and blue kind of look and that kind of feel to it.
Well, I want to ask Gregory about the jerseys in just a moment, but Brian, I have one more question for you about those jerseys, a conceptual question for you here, because one of the details that I really like is that you included the names of 150 actual drinking establishments
Yeah.
from around the state of Wisconsin.
Yep.
Is it exactly 150? How did you compile the list? Did you have to go to all 150 of the dive bars? How if you're a dive bar in Wisconsin, how did you get your name on this jersey?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it started out, and to answer the 150 names that are on it, assuming that you don't buy a size small, and then it gets, cut off or that kind of thing. So yeah, so there's 150 of them that we submitted to kind of just lay out in a template form across the jersey. We started out in 2022. We had our own Tavern of the Game list, and so it was essentially a list of there was about between 50 and 75 establishments within the Lake Country area. And so we started with that list right off the bat. We're like, all right, these people have, these business owners have been with us from day one. We're going to start with that. What does that look like on the jersey? And we're like, okay, so that covered three-quarters of it, right? So where do we come up with the rest? We went through our front office staff, and said, is there any place that you attend or that you frequent that isn't on this list yet? And so then we added those names into it. And then we also went to the Wisconsin Dive Bar guy and Drink Wisconsinably, and said, what are some really good ones that we're missing? And that's kind of how we filled in the rest of that list. So
Have you heard from anyone who's like, hey, you left us off?
I haven't yet. No.
Oh, okay.
No,
Good,
I'm
good,
sure I
good.
will. I'm sure I will. But yeah, so far so good. We've had we've heard good things from those that are on it, however. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, so Gregory, I want to get back to you with a question about this brand. I love when alternate identities are created, A, by human beings, and B, when they're created in-house like this, when you're working with an in-house graphic designer who knows the team, who knows the culture, that sort of thing. But I'm curious to know from your perspective, Gregory, yeah, you referenced, what's going on with these sort of character-driven brands that are out there in minor league baseball, and there are a ton of new alternate brands. So, Gregory, from your standpoint as a designer, how much are you watching what's going on in the industry, like with other, with the big firms, with the Brandios and the Studio Simons and the Ryan Fuses, and how much are you bringing sort of your own flavor and trying to create something unique just for the DockHounds?
Yeah, no, I mean, I keep up with as much as I can. I do follow Baseball Law Design. I keep up with all of the new designs coming out between, like you said, Studio Simon and just a bunch of the minor league baseball organizations. And to bring in a character that feels modern in a way that works for a alternate identity, but also standing out in the fact of, we are this independent team. We don't have like a studio assignment to work with, in the fact of, they have this portfolio of, knowing what works, what doesn't in minor league baseball. We wanted to stand out and try to encapsulate what we feel is our identity and our core values into this massive rebrand. We wanted to bring a twist that no one else can. We wanted to add that little bit of Lake Country spice to our designs.
You managed to make a brand based on dive bars feel kid friendly, right? Like you could still see a kid, even though it's, dice games and it's a name based on dive bars. The brand is still kid friendly. Gregory, is that something you were intentionally aiming for?
Well, that is one of our core values, is trying to make the Lake Country atmosphere a very kid friendly and a very family friendly thing. So we wanted to incorporate that in a way that, you know, yes, it's going to be kid friendly, but it's also going to, appeal to the masses of Lake Country, appeal to those who do go to these cyberbars, who do go to, the surrounding area in Oconomowoc Rock and Delafield and Summit and all of that, and bring them into to showcase that, we're with you too. We do all of this too. We want to hit every aspect from kids to parents to grandparents. We want to showcase Lake Country.
I think the other unique thing about just the state of Wisconsin is that as long as you're with your parent, anybody of any age, as long as you're with your parent or your guardian, can go into a bar. You can, I could take my 14-year-old daughter into a bar in the state of Wisconsin, buy her a beer and sit her at the bar, and and it's state law, right? Like, it's within the law that we're working. So I think that's where also kind of that kid-friendly side of things kind of comes from. And I know that in the design process, we wanted to be the number one as far as an alternate team name and design goes. And so Bart Tabbs originally had his finger in the air as like, I'm number one. And when we presented it to some outside of our organization just to kind of get a gut feel of, what it was going to look like, we actually got some feedback that said, the way his hand was designed, it looks like he's flipping you off.
Oh no.
And so we thought, let's make this, as you said, like, let's go back to that kind of kid friendly, family friendly kind of atmosphere, and we'll give them a thumbs up instead. And I think overall, I think it sells a lot better that way.
Gregory, I'm going to ask you to be a little introspective with your work here. How would you describe the look on Bart? First of all, this is the first time that name has come up. Thank you, Brian. Bart Tabbs. Get it? Bart Tabbs is the name of the mascot. The expression on his face, Gregory, how would you describe the expression on his face?
Yeah, it's a friendly competition phase. It's, you're out with your friends, you're playing darts, you're having a good time. You're not necessarily playing to win, but you still want to win. You have that aggressive, friendly fire face going.
I like it. Brian, with the social media environment being what it is right now, I think anytime there's anything new in the world, there's going to be negativity around it. There have been a select few rebrands, alternate brands that are just sort of universally accepted out there in the world. This is one where I feel like it's been a very positive reaction to it, but knowing that there's that the brand involves alcohol and it involves gambling, which just sounds like a great Saturday night for my baseball palooza guys, right? Like that's a good time in the baseball palooza world. But I'm curious to know whether there has been any pushback on this brand just because that's the social media world we live in and because there are certain sensitivities out there in the world.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I think, with our overall DockHounds brand, we coin ourselves as being very family friendly and very entertaining. And, our normal mascot has Louie the dog, right, associated with it, which just tailors itself to kid friendly. And so when you put a brand like this out there, that's our gut worry, right? Is there going to be big pushback? And we really haven't seen a lot of it. There that initial day when we launched it, there was a couple, that reached out that said, this doesn't really feel family friendly. It doesn't really feel that, kid friendly and that kind of thing. And I think, our kind of stance on that is kind of what we did with Flying Monkeys too, is, if you're going to go with an alternate team name, it has to still be something different and unique. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it, right? Otherwise, you're just rebranding yourself and it just gets messy at that point. So, so it still has to have a little bit of an edge to it. And to us, it's, when we launch this, it still comes down to, the who's ultimately buying the tickets, right? I mean, the adults are still buying the tickets. They're the ones that are still coming to the games and having a good time and, buying an adult beverage or two. And, but it's still family friendly, right? It's still no different than a 4th of July fireworks where the adults are having their fun and the kids are having their fun, right? And so we kind of looked at dive bars as that from an alternate standpoint for us. But yeah, we really haven't had a ton of pushback whatsoever. I think the people of Lake Country are very much engrossed in that kind of realm of, we're going to bring our kids. I'm going to have a cocktail and I'm going to have a good time. My kids are going to go in the fan zone or the kid zone area and they're going to have a great time. And at the end of the day, we're all going to go home and have memories of our own.
I also think back to, we have the actual brewery in our stadium. So, we are not, too far out from being known for having beer and for having that alcohol in our branding because we pride ourselves on having that in stadium brewery.
And then on top of that, we also announced right just before the dive bar name, we're adding on an additional group and single game ticket area within the stadium. We're going to build a dive bar within our stadium. So we had a lawn seating area down the third base line that was utilized but not utilized to the most, right? And so we thought, what can we do? And so we're building essentially it's a 50-foot by I think it's 50-foot by 30-foot bar. It's going to be covered, 7-foot high ceilings. So it's going to be tight, but it'll be a great place for people to go and us to be able to kind of continue this brand on beyond just that 3-game set that we play as the dive bars.
I think that the tight ceilings are sort of mandatory, right? Like you have to have that. So I mentioned my baseball palooza road trip guys. We usually on Saturday night of that trip, Friday or Saturday night of that trip, we will try to find essentially a dive bar. And our game of choice is the shuffleboard, like the table shuffleboard with like the salt on it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But darts and pool and any of that and like a pitcher of PBR. We were in Pennsylvania last year, so of course it was Yingling. That was our beverage of choice there. But I'll let you guys get out of here. But I'm going to ask you each this question: your recreational activity of choice at a dive bar. Is it the Dice Cup or is it one of the other games? What is it that you do when you guys are going to dive bars?
Yeah, for me it's all about dice cups. It's all about the dice games. So ship captain crew or some form of a shake of the day Yahtzee kind of thing. I'm all for it.
As much as I am not great at it, I love playing pool. It's always been my go-to.
Awesome. Well, Brian, you sounded like you were speaking Greek to me there. I didn't understand any of that, so I think we're going to have to get Baseball Palooza to Wisconsin just to experience some of these dice games. And Brian, we may just have to have you be our tutor on those, because none of that sounded familiar at all to me. In the meantime, until we actually get to Wisconsin, where can folks go? Grab some of this merch, check out the new brand, and when will the DockHounds actually be playing as the dive bars?
Yeah, so anybody that's interested can go to dockhounds.com/dive bars for dive bar specific things. Our shop is there for merchandise and everything else. Jerseys, hats, t-shirts, the hats themselves have bark tabs on them in the red, white, and blue, very traditional kind of PBR style branding and everything else. So yeah, dockhounds.com. You can come and check out for whatever merchandise needs. We have a Ship Captain Crew exclusive that's going to be in our fan store on July 7th, 8th, and 9th. That's when we're gonna play as the Wisconsin Dive Bars. And so we'll have some exclusive merchandise in the stadium as well, stuff that you can't buy online, pint glasses and dice cups themselves and that kind of thing. So yeah, so dockhounds.com will be the Wisconsin Dive Bars on July 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Well, now you're giving me FOMO here because I don't think I can get there on July 7, 8, and 9. So I'll have to just see what's available. And this, I've said this before, this hobby of a podcast for me is very expensive because every time I see one of these brands, I need to go buy merch for it. So, Brian Gregory, thank you so much. It's been a ton of fun. And Brian, I appreciate you reaching out to me when this brand came out. I appreciated the heads up and appreciate the opportunity to chat with you again and Gregory to meet you.
No, thank you. Thanks for having us on again. It's exciting for us.
Yeah, thank you.
Deep within the recesses of his secret headquarters, somewhere in Louisville, Kentucky, sits Dan Simon. By day, Dan is the owner of Studio Simon, but by night, he tries to stump one Paul Caputo. This is Studio Simon Stumper.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time for Studio Simon Stumpers, time for a trivia question that Dan Simon brings every single week to the Baseball by Design podcast. Dan, we're celebrating 231st episode of Baseball by Design.
Well, Paul, you've done an episode about the Lake Country DockHounds alternate identity. You have previously done an episode on the Lake Country DockHounds identity.
Yeah.
Let's see how much you know about other alternate identities the DockHounds have done.
Oh.
So our Studio Simon Stumper today asks, what was the name of the alternate identity the Lake Country DockHounds did in 2024 in conjunction with the 85th anniversary, another anniversary callback, of the 1939 premiere of the Wizard of Oz movie? Was it the Flying Monkeys? Was it the Wizards? Or was it the Yellow Brickers?
I do like Yellow Brickers as a possibility, but Dan, Flying Monkeys, final answer, and I know this because it's been a subject of conversation recently because there's a new Flying Monkeys team out there that is also paying tribute to the Wizard of Oz. So Flying Monkeys, final answer based on actual knowledge of this question.
And you are correct. When I read that first one, Paul smiled and nodded his head affirmatively. And when I read the second two, he shook his head from side to side. He knew it right away, and good for you.
I almost answered the question before you read the multiple choice responses, which I don't think I've ever done before. But I wanted to hear what the other options were, and Wizards and Yellow Brickers are both pretty good. So I hope we get to see those sometime.
This also brings up the question again. Flying Monkeys. Now, two teams have done it.
Right.
And frankly, they're both collegiate summer league teams. So
did they have to pay anybody for that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the Wizard of Oz in the public domain, right? Like, because the Greenwood flying monkeys, they were very particular to point out that their flying monkeys were based on the critters from the book rather than the movies. And I wonder if that's because the book is old enough that those are public domain and they don't have to pay any licensing fees.
This would be, frankly, a quick Google search.
Oh, yeah.
Because there is, like, I think it was last year, Winnie the Pooh went into the public domain.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's Winnie the Pooh, the book, which came first, or the Disney depiction of Winnie the Pooh. But it's one or the other or both. I don't really know. But there is a number of years that things go into the public domain. And being that that was the 85th anniversary they were celebrating,
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, maybe it is in the public domain.
Yeah. And I don't know if flying monkeys were even like what those characters were called. And so perhaps it was just, it's just flying monkeys. What do you mean? I've never even heard of the Wizard of Oz. We just came up with flying monkeys on our own. Now, Greenwood, where the flying monkeys, the new flying monkeys are, they're called the Emerald City. And, they have a whole connection to the Wizard of Oz. So, but yes, Lake Country DockHounds, they were the flying monkeys. And it's interesting that both of those teams were able to use that identity, and it wasn't really didn't sound like there was a lot of controversy over both teams doing that.
Well, as part of their weekend, I believe, when they did the flying monkeys, when the players wore the flying monkeys alternate identity uniforms, one of the things they gave away was their mascot as the Tin Man.
Oh.
So do you know what the name of the Lake Country DockHounds mascot is?
I don't.
His name is Louie, but his full name is Louie, middle initial B, last name Sluggin. Louie B. Sluggin.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Dan, thank you as always. This has been fun. We will see you next week. I'm on a little bit of a stumper roll at the moment, so we'll see what the future brings. It's I think I'm pretty streaky with stumpers, so hopefully I didn't just jinx myself.
Okay, well, yes, you are on a bit of a roll. I couldn't tell you how many in a row it's been, but you've been getting, if not on a roll, your batting average lately is good.
Dan, thank you so much. This has been fun. We'll see you next week.
I'll see you then.